My name is Emily Carson. I'm 42 years old, divorced, and living alone in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Portland. For the past few years, life has followed a routine, predictable, and not particularly thrilling. I work remotely as a freelance editor, which means I spend most of my days indoors, tapping away on my laptop, drinking far too much coffee, and talking to my cat, Luna, as if she actually understands me. 3 years ago, my husband Mark and I finalized our divorce. It wasn't dramatic, just quietly heartbreaking. We drifted apart slowly, like two people floating away on separate rafts in a vast ocean. There was no betrayal, no explosive argument, just a slow, cold distance that neither of us tried hard enough to bridge. Since then, I've led a stable life, but one that often felt a little empty. It was on a rainy Thursday evening in October that everything began to shift. The rain was pouring in sheets outside, and I realized I hadn't eaten all day. I scrolled through food delivery apps, craving something warm and comforting, and finally settled on Alfredo pasta from a local Italian spot called Marco's Kitchen. I placed the order and curled up under a blanket to wait. About 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw a young man standing on my porch, soaked to the bone but smiling politely. He couldn't have been older than 18. Wearing a red raincoat clinging to his shoulders, he held a paper bag in one hand. "Delivery for Emily?" he asked, brushing wet strands of hair from his forehead. "That's me," I replied, taking the food. I noticed how drenched he was. "Wow, you must be freezing." He let out a light laugh. "It's part of the job. You get used to it." I handed him a cash tip, but he shook his head. "It's okay, ma'am. Stay dry and enjoy your dinner." Something about the way he said it lingered with me. It wasn't just polite, it felt sincere. As I watched him walk back into the rain toward his bike, I felt a strange pull in my chest. I shrugged it off and went back inside. The following week, on another chilly evening, I found myself craving pasta again. Maybe it was the comfort of the meal, or maybe I was secretly hoping to see the same delivery boy. I placed the order, and sure enough, 30 minutes later, he was back at my door. "Back again," he said with a grin, shaking off his raincoat. "Guess I'm addicted to Alfredo," I joked. He chuckled and handed me the bag. "Hey, it's the best thing on the menu, I don't blame you." That time, I offered him a cup of tea. "You look like you could use something warm." He hesitated, then nodded. "That would be nice." "Thank you." He stood in the doorway while I brewed a quick cup of chamomile. We made small talk about the weather, the restaurant, and how busy his night had been. I learned his name was Jason Miller. He had just turned 18 and was working delivery shifts to save up for community college. He lived with his mom and younger sister, and he struck me as remarkably grounded for someone his age. Over the next few weeks, my pasta cravings became more frequent. Jason seemed to be assigned to my area most nights, and our brief chats turned into longer conversations. Sometimes, he'd sit on the porch with me for a few minutes, sipping tea, or just catching his breath between deliveries. One night, the cold felt sharper than usual, and I noticed he looked especially worn out. "Everything okay?" I asked, handing him a hot drink. He sighed. "My bike chain broke halfway through my shift. I've been walking most of the route." "That's awful," I said. "Come in, at least sit and warm up for a bit." He hesitated, but eventually stepped inside. I pointed him to the kitchen table and handed him a towel. That evening, our conversation stretched into hours. He opened up about his life, how his dad left when he was 10, how his mom worked 2 jobs, and how he did his best to help out. He dreamed of studying computer science and designing apps someday. I was struck by his sincerity, his ambition, and the weight he carried on such young shoulders. I shared a bit about my own life, how I once dreamed of becoming a novelist, but ended up editing other people's stories instead. How quiet the house had felt since the divorce. It was the first time in ages that I felt truly heard. After that night, Jason began dropping by even when he wasn't delivering food. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes just conversation. He'd help me carry groceries or fix small things around the house. He was never inappropriate, just kind. Genuinely kind. At first, I worried what people might think, a woman in her 40s spending time with a teenager, but nothing about it felt wrong. He wasn't just a delivery boy anymore. He had become a friend, someone who brought light back into my quiet world. One Saturday, I was struggling to assemble a bookshelf I'd ordered online. Jason happened to drop by to return a book I'd lent him, and I practically begged for his help. He laughed and said, "Let me guess, you didn't read the instructions?" We spent the whole afternoon putting it together, and by the end, the living room was filled with laughter and the smell of pizza. That night, we sat on the floor eating and talking about everything: movies, dreams, childhood memories. I hadn't laughed like that in years. As time went on, I found myself looking forward to his visits. My days felt lighter. I started writing again, not for work, but for myself. Little journal entries, short stories. It was as if his presence had unlocked a part of me I thought was gone. One evening, we were sitting on the back porch, watching the sky turn shades of purple and gold, when Jason turned to me and said, "You know, Emily, you've kind of become my safe space." His words caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" He looked thoughtful. "I don't really have anyone I can talk to like this. With you, I can just be me, not the guy who has to hold everything together. Just Jason." My eyes welled up a little, but I smiled. "You've done more for me than you realize, too." There was a long silence, but it was a peaceful one. We didn't need to say anything more. The bond we shared was unique. Not romantic, not familial. Just a connection built on trust, understanding, and simple kindness. A reminder that people can enter your life in the most unexpected ways and change everything. Eventually, Jason received a scholarship offer from a local college. He was overjoyed, and I couldn't have been prouder. We celebrated with takeout and cake, and he promised to keep stopping by even after classes began. He kept his word, not as often but enough. Looking back now, I realize how much that chapter of my life healed me. Jason reminded me of the small joys in life: connection, laughter, hope. He didn't swoop in like a hero in some dramatic tale. He showed up with a paper bag of pasta on a rainy night and gradually brought color back into my world. He didn't just deliver food. He delivered light. And a 20-year-old delivery boy changed my life forever, simply by being himself.